what is actually happening inside the brain of a narcissist. So I've been talking about narcissism more, about the energetics, physical stuff. What is it like? So let's talk about what's actually happening in the brain of someone with narcissism and why their behavior feels crazy, psychotic, destructive to the people around them, and it can be completely normal to them. It may seem like they are just acting like normal. And research has shown that people with narcissistic personality disorder, people also with histrionic personality disorder, they have differences in the brain. Stuff works differently. The amygdala is the part in the brain that is responsible for flight, fight, freezing. It can be hyper reactive. That means that they're more easily triggered into states of getting defensive, getting angry, impulsive, acting very unstable, basically. And at the same time, the parts of the brain that are responsible for empathizing with other people, regulating your emotions, basically the stuff that is going to put things in perspective, that is going to reduce your anxiety. Stuff like this is basically the stuff that is responsible for how we behave, how we treat the people around us, how we tune into somebody else's pain, how we integrate our actions basically with long-term consequences, how we calculate the consequences of our actions long-term. When those networks are underactive, what you get is a brain that just basically lashes out and is completely no longer in control over what it's doing. And it is not healthy at all, of course. And I have talked about this in the past. I have talked about this in other videos. I have a whole class on this where I connect what's physically going on in the brain. I connect it to what is happening spiritually, what is going on with energies that perhaps are influencing somebody whose brain, which is your radio, it is your receiver for all the energy. When that is not working properly, then what are you actually channeling? But basically, that is why after a person with narcissism has a very aggressive outburst, or they just act insane all of a sudden, instead of feeling remorse or reflecting on what they did, their brain goes into compartmentalizing. It starts compartmentalizing. They are not going to be tuning into a conscience like you and me. They are not going to be seeing the severity of what actually happened. So they push it into a tiny box. They act like it never happened. And they basically do this because they have less gray matter in brain regions tied to empathy. And that is why the harm that they do onto others doesn't register in the way that it does for the one that's on the receiving end, basically. So what do you see? How does this play out in real life? They can basically tear you down with very demeaning slurs one moment, get very angry, tell you the most horrible stuff about, like, say all kinds of horrible stuff about you, and then the next moment they're trying to bond over something, they're trying to like be friends and stuff like that. And when you look at that from a rational perspective, that looks completely insane, psychotic, and delusional. But inside of their brain, those events are living in separate compartments. They are not connecting these two to each other. They don't integrate how they treat a person. They just compartmentalize. They don't see the contradiction. So to the victim of this behavior, this is fully insane. And you are going to have to set certain boundaries, because that is when you start to walk on eggshells around these people. So basically, it will not connect for them. For them, this is normal because often they were raised in families where this was a cycle, this was normal behavior. This is a relationship model, a program, a toxic one, but still a program that they received that is further breaking the brain down and compartmentalizing all these things. And that is why people end up going no contact with these individuals, because the narcissistic brain isn't wired to register the damage in the same way that yours is. So your nervous system absorbs the trauma, and their nervous system is basically compartmentalizing it. So it is discarding the damage it's doing to you, because that is what they need to gaslight themselves, basically. So when they tell you you're too sensitive, or oh, why are you still talking about this thing that I said before, when I'm not talking about that anymore, it's them compartmentalizing. So, but you are basically living in reality where things are not in boxes, where one thing is connected with another, and where things have consequences. So if you're experiencing this with somebody and they are trying to make you believe that you are being too hard on them, no, because that is basically, they're not seeing the effects through a healthy brain that works in an optimal way. And you are seeing it this way. This was more a video about what is physically happening in the brain. When you watch my Celestial Understanding of Traumatic Soul Contracts webinar, which is about an hour long, comes with a guided meditation, I go into what is physically happening, what is psychologically happening, and what is spiritually, energetically happening, both for the person that has these types of personality disorders and what is happening for you. Why am I talking about this? Because I've gone through this. I'm still going through this kind of with certain individuals, but from behind a very high wall, boundary. And I've gone through all of these cycles of having to understand these individuals on all these levels. And it is so important that you understand physically, mentally, spiritually, how all these things connect, because then you can really start to heal. This class is only $33. It is on my website. And Ryan and I also have a whole trauma healing container where we dive into this in a few weeks' time together with you. We go and zoom in on what you have experienced, and we give you feedback based on what we have experienced. We can tune into your Akashic records. We can tune into your spirit guides, your higher self, all the stuff that you need to fully heal on all these levels. So read more in the description if you want to learn more. Bye-bye.